The War Within expansion launched twice, and we've got to talk about how that went. Hey, it's Soul, and this is Warcraft Weekly. You can help support the channel by hitting the like button, subscribing for more WoW coverage, and catching me whenever I'm live. Because I was pretty neck deep into it, I'm going to have a very anecdotal tone with my commentary during these two launches, or extended launch, or, the real launch versus the delayed release, whatever you want to call it. Our experiences over the past week and some have been, very unique, and I invite you to share, whether you were a part of early access, the general launch, or if you're just getting started and you're here because you're wondering like this is playable, right? So let's talk about it. Now that we're a week into the War Within, the overall launch, in hindsight, turned out to be very good and fun. I want to put that out there now, but it wasn't without its usual hiccups, like service problems and bugs and features that didn't quite work out right and had to be turned off and then on again and again, frustrating players. Notably, the tools of commerce, like the auction house and the crafting order system, went down more than a few times during the launch period, disrupting trade. Even now, the auction house is going through this up and down crawl. Sometimes zones would be hit with this immense lag, and other times, or at least this one time, characters were kind of rolled back all of a sudden. That happened to me when my buttons disappeared, and all of a sudden I was wearing the gear that I had on half an hour earlier. And after so much streaming, I thought I was losing my mind for a second. It was kind of weird. But disruptions, those disruptions weren't nearly on the level of previous expansions. Like, remember when realms were just dead, or when people got onto the boats to the Dragon Isles and they were just unceremoniously dropped without zoning over? So downtime seemed to be a little bit less than the days-long server-wide outages that we're used to. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect, and it's not an excuse to say these days spotty launches are just a normal thing in the industry, but I'm just trying to say that we've definitely had worse before. The leveling and questing experience is being very well received by players, and I had a really good time with it. The campaign itself was purposely thin for those folks who wanted to get into the action, but the side questing shines with plenty of ups and downs, exposition if you want to, stay a while and listen. And I've brought this up a few times before, the music is really, really good. I don't really have the chops to speak technically on this. Usually with World of Warcraft and other Western style RPGs, I find the music tends to lean towards feeling like this ambient mood. With The War Within, it feels more melodic, like the overworld music in old Japanese RPGs. It's more catchy, it's fun, and in the fourth zone, that's when it gets really creepy. Folks who want to take their time and enjoy the world building are going to be in for a treat, and I've started to come around and really like the Earthen allied race once I got into the multiple quest lines that lead towards them being playable. During early access, folks were like, hey, when are they going to be accessible? And at first they were disappointed it wasn't immediately available. I'm sure that's still true for some people. We can't roll as them until next week, but in the meantime we got to enjoy learning a lot of their history that frankly we didn't get for folks like the Drakthir or many other allied races, at least not to this level. What I'm a little worried about is if after this, the story of the Earthen is over and they stand aside for us to, stare at Xel'atath's feet for the rest of the expansion, which is not the worst idea, but I want to see more characters shine too. What about Thrall's feet? Yeah? Early access was, I guess, a double-edged sort of success. The launch just worked with minimal issues, and in hindsight, it looks like it gave the WoW team a little bit of room to make changes before the general launch, and some changes better than others. Before that, though, early access folk got their chances to plow through leveling without the hustle and bustle of the greater audience, so there were very few to no disconnects or lag and the like, and we also had to deal with each other when it came to commerce, so it made for some interesting behavior there, and a demonstration that even though early access players were made up of a lot of so-called hardcore folk wanting to get ahead, they're also capable of making mistakes in determining the value of certain items that might have seemed plentiful and not very valuable at first, but suddenly blew the heck up. So the TLDR, gathering still wins. There's one regret that I happen to have, and again, this is a personal thing. It's the idea I sported about splitting zone questing up between multiple alts. So I completed third and fourth zones side quests on my main, while the other alts, they took on the first and second zones. But now that I'm mostly back on my main, now, here I am walking around seeing all these quests that I did/didn't do, and it's irritating. Yeah, it's irritating. I keep seeing something to do, but it's not really something to do, and I freaking hate it. So I'm about to spend the rest of the preseason redoing these zones, and yeah, I know I'm still gonna get like a little something out of it, but I really won't, you know? Of course, on the other side of early access were the majority of players left to wait a few days, and for some, the animosity between early access and general folk or late coming folk, whatever, it was only growing. Like they get to play earlier, they get to level faster and get ahead and make all that crazy gold and so on. And when the official launch was underway, it sure didn't help when there were problems not seen during early access, all the performance issues that I talked about earlier. The drama sort of peaked after a blue post shortly after the general launch detailing a few balance changes to early leveling. Enough feedback came in apparently that it was too easy to level to the point where even moderately geared characters were playing the MOP remix or Diablo. It had that kind of feel to it. And highly geared level 70s were carrying level 80s through instances. Funny enough, the Wowhead team headlined this as increasing leveling difficulty, that leveling would feel harder, which wasn't technically a lie, but intentional or not, it riled people up. It's not good optics to see how levels 70 to 75 were, trivial during early access and then not so trivial for everyone else later. If the news of the change was a total dumpster fire, the actual changes and the implementations and the reactions to it, it was the water that put out that fire really quickly. Speaking broadly, as expected, instead of killing mobs in a global cooldown, well-geared level 70 characters took maybe 2 or 3 global cooldowns to bring an enemy down, while legitimately lesser geared players in I'm talking about like item level 300 or so, they could enjoy item level scaling to compensate. Once reaching that level 75 or 76 range, combat outdoors and in dungeons, it mostly started to feel the same. And any discourse right now is just really pushing embers and trying to ignite something. There's the question if early access will be a thing again though. Blizzard's going to be crunching numbers when thinking of a final answer, but it wouldn't surprise me one bit if they keep going with this, because looking back after only a few days, it's kind of hard to tell who's really behind compared to others. I mean, yeah, folks got to level the characters faster, but I've seen plenty of risk takers get burned during early access while others are coasting their way to gold cap faster because they've just been watching the markets. I wonder if, in anticipation of next time, are a lot of players going to start looking towards gold making and WoW tokens as a way to ensure early access in the future, especially for folks who live outside the US who may have to contend with extremely high costs for digital goods. The gold trading craziness of the first few days came and went, and it'll probably come again. I found it really neat to see on my server at least lots of interest in armor and weaponsmiths to craft what's basically high-level adventurer class gear that we know is going to be replaced super quick once the season starts. I think it turned out to be a great success compared to the training reagent things that we had in early Dragonflight, and those never really took off. But once the season starts, we're not likely to ever see requests for these kinds of crafts again as we move on to a new stage, I guess? The economy has had these multiple stages where different kinds of gold makers were able to excel, beyond just the first few days of selling everything of worth. Recently, a full crafting spark became available, enabling these armor and weapon and jewelry smiths to shine because of their choices. And as the economy starts to mature even more, the season will begin and full consumption of goods will start with the Heroic Week, followed by Mythic Plus the week after. Gear, of course, is going to be replaced, which needs new enchants and gems and items to fill sockets and more. I have no doubt some folks are going to start holding resources in anticipation because we'll more than likely have this sudden explosion of demand for enchants and gems and weapon buffs and more. The race to world first, that's going to consume vast quantities of high quality materials. Gatherers will help maintain the supply, and in a new twist, alchemists are positioned to help prevent a hard crash of any one resource. They're able to convert these into other materials and thus keeping the price of these otherwise low demand items high. And gold is just waiting to be picked up, whether you've got a gathering profession or if you're, I don't know, digging holes in the ground for hard to find materials. No doubt we'll see changes to a few items that are high in demand but very rare to find, like the profane tinderbox and nullstones, but it's also likely these will eventually become more plentiful according to maybe some fangled Blizzard plan we don't know about yet. And there were some more last minute changes based on feedback. Heroics can be queued up and awarded adventurer class gear up from explorer as it was originally planned. Now for me, the jury's still out on delves and dungeons. Like the initial initial presentation, it has me happy, but I think it's that new expansion smell, right? Like, I haven't even done heroics at all. I stopped my atom level upgrades at around the 580 range, and I think I'm good until I start replacing this stuff with seasoned gear, so I'm just kind of saving resources. I admit it's kind of funny watching the conversations over levers, as if like the dungeon finder was this brand new, never before seen feature. It has been neat figuring out delves, and the difficulty does sneak up on you if you're not prepared. I'm just really eager to get into the seasonal side of the gameplay when that starts, see how tough it is to progress towards level 8 delves for the quote easy champion gear, and then push for that not so secret boss. So I've been lucky. Personally, my launch experiences since Warlords of Draenor have been super smooth. Like, I've had very few disconnects, and I had that weird rollback, but nothing close to catastrophic. Not being a disaster isn't a reason why the World Within launch has been good. It is good, but it also very much needed to be. The borrowed power era of World of Warcraft could rely on cool features like, the likes of artifacts and soul binds to lure people in, draw them in, make people be like, ooh, let's look at that. The relief of Dragonflight changing the formula with a different approach, the return of talents, that was meant to draw people in. But how did this new expansion do? Delves, yeah, they're a feature. Hero talents are called a feature, although I think that they were oversold, and a big emphasis on these systems is geared towards solo progression with, again, delves, follower dungeons from the get-go, the upcoming story mode in raids, patron crafting orders, and more to lessen the dependence on group play without actually damaging group play. Blizzard also took a fairly aggressive marketing approach, calling on streamers and creators outside of the WoW space in an effort to draw in the audience that might have checked out a while ago. Not to mention the ongoing promotions on Twitch to get more eyes on what Warcraft has to offer. But was it effective? According to StreamCharts.com, which watches all sorts of data, fewer and fewer people are watching World of Warcraft streams, and far fewer channels are hosting World of Warcraft compared to the Shadowlands launch. We gotta take things into context though. There was a massive drop in player retention since late 2020. The audience who streams or watches on Twitch, it's a worthy talking point, but it's not the only barometer of a video game's health. And in the past 4 years, the biggest streamers, they have changed, and so have their audiences. Using myself as an example of a small streamer, I've had far more people showing up to my War Within streams versus the Dragonflight streams, which featured similar promotions. Of course, on the other side, someone like Asmongold commands a massive audience, but he only streamed WoW for only 6 hours during the general release, and regardless of how you feel about him, that could have been a lot more additional exposure. What I'm really waiting for may or may not happen as soon as next week, because when Shadowlands released back in 2020, Activision Blizzard tooted their horn over it being the fastest selling PC game of all time before Cyberpunk snatched it away shortly after. Dragonflight, on the other hand, received no such fanfare because they never hit any of those points. So what'll happen with the War Within, with these promos and the early access and the return of Metzen, not to mention what World of Warcraft as a whole has to offer? Or does it even matter? I mean, really, there could be like 1 billion people playing World of Warcraft, but it doesn't matter if you aren't having fun. And that's why I want to hear your story, your experience, your risky ventures and terrible losses and epic wins. And that's the show. And I do hope that everyone's having a good time. There are so many, I don't know, like little things to do and to look out for. And I'm looking at the achievement UI right now to serve as kind of a checklist for other things to discover while looking for purple piles of dirt to pick up. And maybe I should write a jingle on that part. Anyway, the launch stuff was great. And I may do some more long streams while drops and promos are still going, but you can expect me to go back to dual streaming on YouTube starting next week. Also, you can expect a reminder guide with a cleaner and updated version of what to do throughout your typical week. And let's wrap things up. I am super grateful to the family over on Twitch for hanging out with me during the launches. Y'all were just great company. The giveaways, they went by nice and smooth. And also an extra shout out to Trilo for gifting 100 subscriptions and welcoming so many folks to the channel. Thanks a lot, dude. To our patrons, we can't forget about you. Thanks so much. And to you, viewer, my algorithm squad, thanks for making it to the end. Please like this video and subscribe for more WoW coverage. Catch me live, and I'll catch you later. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.